Hey, what's up? I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give this video a like.
Podcast below in the description. Get on that as well.
All right, John. Carson Wentz. How about? And I appreciate this. I don't feel like I've really seen a lot of Jaws lately. Ron Jaworski. Speaking of the
like
AFL,
he's been off the radar a little bit.
But every once in a while he'll pop up with, Colin Kaepernick going to be the greatest quarterback of all time. Sorry, I really like Jaws. We just make fun of that one. You take some big swings.
Business a long time ago. You got to take a stance. You can't be a fence sitter, right?
No. You take some big swings. We're very pro Jaws on this show. Maybe we can get Jaws on the show.
I've tried. I've DM'd him several times over the years. He follows me. Never DM me back.
Maybe we got to go around as PR people.
Yeah, maybe.
He says the Colts offered 2's for Carson Wentz. You think about where we were a week ago, it felt like Carson Wentz was on the verge of getting traded, which would be in the best interest of the Eagles if the market thought that. I think the Eagles were banking on some Carson Wentz FOMO. Teams will freaking out a little bit that someone else is offering more than they are, and it turns out everybody's willing to be pretty patient on Carson Wentz. 2's is not exactly what Howie Roseman has in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just simply the first thing you have to ask yourself when a player is quote unquote available is why is the guy available, right? And right away, unlike if someone's back to the house analogy, if someone's selling their house, you don't ask yourself like, why are they moving? Like people move all the time. It's pretty natural. It's not, and it's become a little more in vogue. It feels like this offseason. People don't trade quarterbacks, guy. Not legitimate starting quarterbacks. Not guys they've drafted. It's a little bizarre, right? Like Stafford, to me, in the history of the league, that is somewhat normal. Guys in their mid-30s, been a place forever, not winning, that happens. Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, that's a big red flag. Why do you want to get rid of Jared Goff? Well, he's not good enough. I think most people go, okay, we get it. Carson Wentz, why do they want to get rid of him? I think his talent. Now, if he had been really good, they're probably not trading him or thinking about trading him. But even if he had been shitty, and we've talked about this over and over, I just don't think they're running to trade him. I think the big issue is he has character concerns. And when I say character concerns, first people think is people that get arrested, right? Or people that get in trouble. That is not – you can say a character concern, at least when I was in the biz, guys that just aren't maybe a great guy. That aren't just the famous – draft day story in the movie when the guys didn't show up to his birthday. That type shit in football with quarterbacks is really something. And I do think we've said this over and over, Guy. If it was just his talent, I don't even think it's just it. No one would argue he would fetch a first-round pick if he just had a shitty year, but everyone's character's pristine. But that goes back. I think most people would be like, well, they never trade him then if he was beloved in the building.
Right. They
have themselves just a big red flag. And for as bad as his football was, and he was the worst starting quarterback in the league this year, according to Middle Cop FF, that they have themselves a problem on their hand because I think the other teams know that, people ain't lined up to get a guy that might not be a great locker room source. And you can even say, I wonder if Ballard is this is still pretty risky, giving 2's for a guy that, has some issues, right?
It could be one of the problems for the Eagles is that two of their primary trade partners or potential trade partners, the Bears and the Colts, maybe know the guy too well. And to your point, there are a lot of guys that become available for a variety of reasons. Quarterbacks aren't one of them. And it's really the biggest position where you can't have a guy that you'd almost rather that he got, his teammates loved him, but he got arrested for something, for a barroom fight. If Carson Wentz had been in 2 bar fights and arrested twice, but was beloved in the locker room, he'd actually be a more acquirable player.
1,000,000%.
That's the crazy thing. And it's not really that crazy because what matters to an NFL team is, does he fit into my locker room? Will these guys lead him? You acquire him and you go, obviously we know he's got to mature, but the one thing you can't deny when you talk to people who know him, they love going to war, standing shoulder to shoulder with this man. Not a single person has said they love going to war with Carson Wentz.
Not a soul.
In fact, when they go to war with somebody else, they talk about how much they love going to war with Nick Foles and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, God, the offense looks a lot better. That's the first thing everyone says. Wow, we were a lot more efficient. We executed a lot better. I don't know, and I'm not trying not to overreact or hyperbole or all the bullshit, but it's one of the crazier fall from graces when you factor in part of it is there are these unique variables that'll probably it'll never be duplicated, right? Because I think Jeff Hostetler once we were really young, but like when he won the Super Bowl, when Phil Simms was starting quarterback and got hurt, I don't think Phil Simms was ever viewed as like one of the best quarterbacks. He was a good player. He was a starting player on a great team in the Giants, but he was like, I'd say a quarterback, like a game manager type. And he was still the starter and the backup won it, but it was never like he was an older player at the time. When it happened to Carson, it was like, well, he's so young, he'll be fine. And then it always just kept derailing more and more. And now we're at the point where, think about this. The 49ers, who desperately want to upgrade a quarterback, I've been told they're not interested in Carson Wentz really at all, even for like cheap. Like they wouldn't even be like, yeah, we can get it, him 50 cents on the dollar. Because you talk to me, that is a good line to have. We don't even want this guy. And I think a lot of people go, we wouldn't want this guy, regardless of the price. Because he comes with a price, right? He makes a lot of money. And you're kind of stuck with him for a couple years. He's
right.
Not part of like getting Jared Goff, who is not nearly as talented as Carson, but has stayed healthy, beside a kind of a freak injury to his thumb. Like him, and clearly the front office, they didn't maybe love him, but I do think people like him, for the most part. There's never been an article like in the locker room completely turned on him like there has consistently with Carson. And when that happens at wide receiver, if Carson Wentz was a wide receiver, he'd get traded. I think there's a lot that goes into trading for a quarterback guy. I'd say as a GM / owner / coach, it's probably the biggest personnel move you ever make whenever you either draft a guy or acquire a guy that's expensive or trade for a guy, right? It was we poo-poo when the Niners were like, God, he got Jimmy for really cheap, and they had to think about it, for an hour or whatever. But that is, in fairness, like it's a big move. Like we're going to acquire this guy. You're kind of in the boat with him then for a couple years probably.
It means we're not going to get Kirk Cousins in that case, right?
It does truly pigeonhole that, because it's the one position, I guess, beside kicker or punter, but let's not even pretend like those parallel the quarterback, that you do kind of just put all your chips in the table on a guy for a short period of time, even if you don't give him a long-term extension.
Right. Well, the thing to your point with Carson is you're not taking a flyer on him. You're putting him in your locker room, and if it doesn't work, you're stuck because of his contract. It's not,
and when you trade
let's try it.
Starter, right?
Well, yeah, that too. But it's not, let's try it, and if it doesn't work, we lost our picks, but we'll move on and pivot because of his contract. You will not be able to resell the home. You're screwed. And now you might be worse off at the position. So, there was the story that maybe they would attach. Did Jeremy Fowler write this? That maybe they would attach Ertz, who's got a $12 million cap number this year. I do think for them, ultimately, they do have two teams that are truly desperate. They have the Colts, who are truly desperate. Like, the Colts truly need a quarterback.
I would do 2's if I was them, because I have all this cap space. Get Ertz to go in my offense with Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, T.Y. is a free agent, and Carson, because I do think that Ertz and Carson that's the one guy that's kind of had his back and been a supportive individual.
Yeah, that's interesting. You bring him along as kind of a bridge to the other kids on the playground.
And Ertz is a really good player.
Yeah.
Right? $12 million, probably like single digits, but that might be kind of lucrative. But it does show you that that's even being talked about. They're having to incentivize this player. Because like you mentioned, if it is bad, you're not only not trading him again, you are cutting him in 2 years if this doesn't work out, right? That's
a wasted 2 years.
Yeah, it's a wasted 2 years. Because you gave up picks. Clearly, if you're cutting them, that means you're probably not making the playoffs. So their picks in the second round, pretty good. It would be a disaster if he doesn't resurrect his career. And when I say resurrect his career, like become a consistently solid quarterback and be a guy people like. Because part of it's not, if he just plays middle of the road and people don't like him, that's a problem, right? To me, if you're a top 8 guy, you're like, yeah, you can be a little bit of a dick. But if he's like, okay, 14, 15, which I think the Colts would take. They just won 11 games with Rivers. But I bet Phillip Rivers probably beloved in there. They're like, I remember Chris Ballard, whenever he retired, was like, it was an incredible 6 months having him around our guys, right?
Yeah.
It could be the opposite with Carson.
No,
you might get the same level of play out of him. Hell, he might be a little bit better, but if it's like, he walks in like a shit don't stink and Michael Pittman doesn't like him, and Jonathan Taylor's like, what's this guy's deal? Because like those two guys right away, and like the dude from Notre Dame, Quentin Nelson, if you're Carson, it's not on them to buy into you, right? You need to get them to buy into you. Like those guys, they get to feel you out a little bit because they're going to hear some things.
Right.
But like the core of their group is, I'd say, pretty high level guys, right? Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin, Quentin Nelson. You're talking like team captain levels in college, super high character. They're just, when I think Chris Ballard guys, I think like kind of like the Belichick version of a GM, like kind of just wants to hit doubles, solid guys, super high character, not into taking like crazy swings that are like, his crazy swing was for like DeForest Buckner, right?
Which wasn't crazy because keep in mind, DeForest he's a 10 across the board, right? He's a great example. They went all in on him, but he's not just an all-pro player. He is an all-pro guy. Like
I'd say he's probably a better guy than he is a player.
I mean, he has a great rep. Before we had Juszczyk on our last week, we were just watching a bunch of Juszczyk videos and whatever. And one thing I stumbled on was DeForest Buckner interviewing Kyle Juszczyk at the Pro Bowl. And all you gotta do is watch DeForest Buckner for 2 minutes, even if you haven't heard a thing about him, and you just go, DeForest Buckner's an impressive guy, a likable guy, clearly liked by his teammates, just comfortable in his own skin. Obviously, a guy they love to play with. Just it's obvious in 2 minutes that's who DeForest Buckner is. You're right. That's who. Now the Bears, the culture in a desperate situation because they don't have a quarterback. The Bears are kind of organizationally in it, right? The culture in a desperate situation as a team. As an organization, they're not in a desperate spot. Their coach, their GM, everybody's safe. Everybody's fine. The Bears are, like the Niners, are not in a desperate situation organizationally, and they're not in a desperate situation they do have Jimmy, whatever you think of them. The Bears are kind of in a desperate situation organizationally, it feels like, right? Like it's a make or break year.
So if they're not willing to trade a lot for him, that shows you something.
Yeah, that they might. Yeah, it does.
I'd argue when Carson was clearly like, hey, we want to get rid of him this week, and no one really bit, is pretty reflective on Carson Wentz. Like that's it, and I understand how as a human he goes, I'm making all this money, I'm blaming the Eagles. Like I don't think he's being introspective or self-reflective right now, but that's just the reality what the league's telling you. And maybe he'll learn it when it gets even uglier than right now. But it's like, bro, no one's trading for you. Your team wants to get rid of you. It's pretty sad how far the guy's fallen, right? Because like you were at Oracle on Saturday night. Harden became a complete, Chase became a complete turd. I mean, basically just double middle fingers, whatever this year. Incredible to have Rachel Nichols speak for you because it just makes it seem like, God, was Houston wrong? The way she kept shaping these narratives, like, but what no one ever argued is like, yeah, this guy's elite, right?
You just gotta be one of the two.
I'd even say Kyrie too. Like Kyrie clearly can be a complete pain in the ass, but then you just watch him start cooking, you're like, holy shit. If Carson was just like, he's a top 5 quarterback, he would already been gone, right?
No, they wouldn't be trading him.
Yeah, they wouldn't be trading him.
If he was a top 5 quarterback, it wouldn't matter what he said to who. It didn't matter if he brushed by Jeffrey Lurie.
Let's say he was a top 10 quarterback and they still just hated his guts. He would have been traded already. Like someone would have paid maybe a 1 and like 2's, right? It showed like his play was that bad and he's a pain. I just don't know if his stock for a guy that still has, like, obviously if you're injured or whatever, you have no value. Like he does have value. I don't think his value could be any lower.
That's the other thing is like his value is this low and the Eagles are not saying, all right, let's try and get his stock up and next year we'll move him. They're just like, we got to find a way. We don't care what it costs us. It's going to be addition by subtraction. Now, I mean, they do care what it costs them because they don't want 2's, they want a 1. But the market is not – they are not drumming up the interest and creating the feeding frenzy that they had hoped. That much.
You know what it shows you? Just that they've even thought about like, hey, man, we'll give you Ertz too. It's like, hey, I'll sell my house. I'll throw in –
throw in the car.
I'll throw in the expedition too.
Whatever's in the garage you can have.
Yeah. Keep it. The couches, yours too. It's like fuck.
Yeah, you'd be like, are you running from the FBI? Why are you trying to sell it like this? What's wrong? It would kind of make you concerned that there's money hidden in the walls or something. A body's under somebody die here. Yes, Carson's career.